What's up? Hola, mi gente. Welcome to the Limbo Latino podcast. I am Joseph Colon, your host, aka the Limbo Latino, and I'm excited about this episode. I've been looking forward to it. I'm bringing our guest for the past following years. I've been actually following him, not just through IG, but actually on YouTube and so on and so forth. Definitely check out this brother. He is killing it, and now he's got new ventures, and I'm so proud of him. But before we start, I want to make sure that you hit like and subscribe, share and comment wherever you get your podcasts. Also make your way to YouTube, because we'll be putting this interview in its full glory and its full interview on YouTube. So make sure you follow us there as well. This podcast was created, as you know, to highlight and bring you the beauty of the Latino, Latina, a Latinx story. So to remind you of your greatness, and there's a lot to talk about. So in this first season, we're just going to introduce you to some amazing people. We're going to help you frame and reframe our history to the masses. And I want you to hear it from the movers and shakers, known and unknown, until today. So we're looking forward to today's episode. It's a great honor for me to introduce to you José Viera. He is best known by his stage name, Prime Ethic, and his career as an opening musical act for Fat Joe, as well as many other established performers, started in early 2018. And Prime has had an extensive background in performing arts and entertainment. Growing up in Lakeland, Florida, Prime attended Rochelle School for the Arts, as well as the Harrison School for the Arts. He later moved to Atlanta, Georgia, to pursue career in filmmaking and music, which is why I'm so excited to bring him aboard, because he's been so busy. I'm so thankful that he even made time today. Prime is the co-founder of Kevlar Productions. So I'd like to thank him for coming onto the show. And I can't wait for everyone to get a little bit acquainted with him and what he's been up to. So here is Prime. How are you?
Hey, what's going on? What's going on? Limbo Latino. What's up, bro?
Yeah, what's up? So, I like to get this started. I talk about this Limbo Latino Sala. It's our living room. We really get into some questions. But I really want to start off with a real basic question that I ask all my hosts is, what is your story? Tell me your story, and who you are.
Yeah. My story, man. I was born in Puerto Rico. I was born in San Juan, Santurce specifically, and I was raised in Florida. So when I was about 3 years old, moved to Florida just with my mom. So it was definitely like a cultural difference. And most of my life, I pretty much wanted to go back to Puerto Rico, but I was raised in a predominantly African American, like historically segregated area. So a lot of my background, a lot of my culture is shaped by, how I was actually brought up, as well as where I'm from. So with that being said, I got into hip hop really early at a young age. I started rapping. That was just kind of like what you would do to pass time. And then I started taking it a little bit more serious and started doing shows, and I was able to gain some success doing some pretty cool shows. I think the biggest show I was able to do was like in front of like 8,000 people in the Amway Center in Orlando, and it's still like a dream when I think about that. So heavy with music. I was producing, I was writing, singing, rapping, Spanish, English, just diversifying. I mean, I grew up in a music family too, so my family was always like very musically inclined. So it was always very natural for me to get into music and stuff like that. But then I ventured out when I moved to Atlanta into filmmaking because of the music, actually. So I similar like you, how you invest in your show and everything. When I started doing shows, I started getting my own film equipment so that I could like capture my shows and in high quality. So I started doing that, but I didn't have the funds to pay an editor, so I had to learn editing and I had to like edit my own stuff. And people started liking my videos and they thought I was like going through a company, and I was telling them no, I'm doing editing. So then other friends that were doing music and stuff wanted to see if I could produce music videos for them and stuff like that. So it started just very organic, and then it just started picking up more. And I'm somebody who believes in like the path of least resistance. So once my music kind of hit a certain plateau, and I saw that the film stuff was actually working in my favor, then I started seeing exploring that. So that in a nutshell, that's and I'm also a father and a husband. So my daughter is my everything, and my family. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how you do it. To be honest with you, I've been following you for the past, actually during the pandemic. I'm like, wow, he's out there doing it. Like you really been beefing up your your entertainment empire. Really, it's really cool.
Thank you, thank you. I mean, I similar like you. I think I know, but I'm a very like faith driven person, so I just rely on my faith, and I rely that, like I said, the path of least resistance. Some people call it the law of attraction. Just I guess the things that are already working in your favor. I just keep exploring that, and then that's when it just kind of explodes in ways that I can't even. I'm kind of as surprised as you are sometimes. When I look back, I'm like, dang, it's crazy.
That's so cool, man. So,
Hmm.
you talked about your identity, particularly being a Latino, uh, growing up on the island, right? That you were born there.
I was born on an island.
Yeah,
Yep.
you're born on the
Well,
island.
hmm. And then
Tell me how that guided you. Like, just how did it guide you? Also, I talk about the Limbo Latino experience, and I tell folks, living between two worlds, and really talking about like the black and white American construct, right? Where do we fit in that world? So, talk to me about that growth, and possibly like your how you got involved in the communities, and how did you find yourself?
yeah, that's that. You made me just think of something like the whole racial situation because growing up Puerto Rican, and I look back at my family all the time. Like we have different shades, skin tones in the family. So one thing that was always really weird to me was like basically learning racism in America because in Puerto Rico, at least my family, there was no there was no skin color, colorism, racism. That wasn't really a concept that I even grew up thinking about. And then me growing up Puerto Rican in a black area, it was something that like little things would catch my attention. Like nobody would ever get my name right. Everybody would oh,
Yeah,
where's Jorge? Where's Julio? And it's like I'm not Julio, I'm not Jorge, but yeah, so there was like always a lack of respect, I guess, to really understand Puerto Ricans or whatever where I was from specifically. However, I love how it shaped my way of treating everybody else because I genuinely didn't feel like even though I was raised in this kind of neighborhood or even like experience in different cultures, I never really felt so much of a division growing up, and I always was striving to like create Puerto Rico, I guess, here in a way, where it's that melting pot.
yeah, yeah. I think that's always a struggle too, right? When you are in the states and trying to find your way, but then realizing that you already have everything you need. Really, people don't, when I talk to folks about the Caribbean culture, and particularly being Puerto Riqueño, it's like you can't understand the feeling of pride that really exudes. It just flows through you, and no matter what you do, your resiliency is there. So,
Yeah,
I definitely vibe with you on that. It's one of those things where you can't really explain. You kind of have to feel. I always used to tell my friends, "Why don't you go to New York and go to the Puerto Rican Day Parade?" You'll see what I mean by that when you see millions of people just having a good time and really enjoying the culture. So it's really cool.
definitely, definitely. I mean, that's something that the pride is so serious. If you think about it, like if you really just were trying to analyze how small Puerto Rico is and how much global impact Puerto Rico has had, it's like a miracle. To be
Yeah.
honest, like music, food, culture, acting, everything. Some of our favorite classic movies, sometimes even behind the scenes, there was a Puerto Rican involved. A lot of civil rights movements within America, Puerto Ricans were involved. It's like this little island of people, this identity that we have has contributed to so much that has shaped the world, even down to language. So yeah, it's there. The pride is there. I think that sometimes the issue is toning the pride down a little bit and showing and showing love to everybody else and everybody else's contributions sometimes.
That's right. That's right. And I
Hmm.
think that's part of it, right? This whole Latino universe, the Latinx universe that we talk about.
Hmm.
How do we make sure we make moves and there's no hierarchy and that we don't subscribe to like the that colonialistic ways of thinking, right? And
Hmm.
being kind of colorized and thinking about who's on top and if it's a racial thing or ethnic thing, who's actually more Latino or speaking the language or not speaking the language, things like that. But you bring up a good point, especially about our artists having such impact, and you yourself, standing on those shoulders of the great ones, right? And talking about Celia Cruz, which is how I found you on YouTube, and you remix that whole thing. But talk to me about your work and like how that's infused in the diaspora in particular, and how do you evolved from an artist to saying, I want to get behind the camera, like this is my thing.
Yeah, I think the very first thing you got to start with is that you gotta be more conscious about like what you're doing, why you exist, things like that. I get very deep, I've always been that way since I was a kid. Like you got to think about what motivates you to do anything, let alone represent your people and things like that. So for me, I just didn't ever want to support abuse. I never wanted to be on the side of like, bullies and things like that. I just always, it never, that never like sat well with my spirit. So with that being said, with music specifically, when I started writing rap, I was writing like silly music at first, just like parody raps and stuff like that. And then one day I decided to write something like heartfelt. And my cousin actually reached out to me and told me it was his favorite song. And I was young still. I was like in ninth grade. So I was probably like 14 or something. And I wasn't expecting any kind of reaction to my music, let alone like my cousin telling me that my song was his favorite song and it was a deep song. So that was the first time when I saw that something I write, something I create can actually have an impact on somebody. And then from that point on, it became like, how do I impact at a higher level and for what reason? So the reason continues to be shaped and continues to change the more I get involved with things, the more I experience things as a man. And a lot of the protests and things that have gone on, I try to get either involved or I try to keep a close ear to it, because that's the people voicing, what they feel needs to change, because they feel either oppressed or they feel like they're not being represented. So I always like study that. I look at that through history, and with my art, I try to add, um, like I try to contribute to that legacy of fighting back and representing yourself and being unapologetic about who you are, and a pride, but like a more of a like a righteous pride. It's not just a pride for the sake of like, let's make a lot of money and whatever. Let's have pride in helping each other make a lot of money. Let's have pride in building each other up. Let's have pride in fighting, even though there's so many obstacles stacked against us. So with the music, it kind of it transitioned. It's aggressive too. Like my music comes from an aggressive place because it's also therapeutic for me. And also with the film, I'll get specific about that, man. Like when George Floyd was murdered in
Mm-hmm.
front of everybody, and we all saw it. Me and two of my friends, we decided to join the protest, and so we joined the protest in Orlando, and you saw like how it got, like
Mm-hmm.
the whole globe was on fire.
Mm-hmm.
um, but specifically, I remember my experience in Orlando. It was like we were super overwhelmed by the police. We were super outnumbered, and it was almost like they rehearsed like blocking us and like making us go where they wanted to go, or
Mm-hmm.
where they wanted us to go. And like there was this really uneasy feeling. It was a feeling like we could die today, because what's going on? People get shot at protests and stuff for a lot less. And the way that these protests were amplifying and escalating, we knew anytime you joined it, specifically this one, it was like it was possibly a life or death situation. I had to look at my friends, and we had to look at each other and say like, are you still down to do this? And is it still important to, like, is this that important? Is it that serious? We have kids and stuff like that. And we looked at each other as men, and we're like, yeah, man, like if this happens, if we die for this, this is what it is. Like, and from that point on, right, This is right before I started Kevlar Productions, and I wanted to get into why it's called Kevlar and everything like that. It has to do with this specific day. So when we go to Orlando and people start doing what they're doing, they start throwing we were protesting at Chauvin's house. He had a property in Orlando. So we were at his neighborhood that we thought he was probably gonna try to escape to and hang out in Florida, and we're like, we're not having that. So we went to his neighborhood, we went to the doorstep, then all of a sudden people started like breaking windows and throwing eggs and this. So then at that point, me and my brothers were like, all right, man, let's slide out of here because you know, they're gonna try to get us right here because of this. And it wasn't even something that we had started. That's a whole nother story. But the case was that we ended up leaving and we felt very unsatisfied. You know, we felt like, dang, like they got us, like they beat us, they made us feel like they were more powerful. We still didn't feel like we voiced what we needed to voice yet. We feel like we didn't get enough done today. And we felt this anger. And I remember calling somebody, a mentor of mine, and I remember telling him, like, man, like, I'm ready to just go crazy. Like, and he was like, man, you need to calm down. And I'm like, no, man, this is messed up. Like, I can't believe, you know, that they just keep killing us, and they keep like they don't understand that we just want to breathe. Like, we just want to be free, and we want to support each other, and we want to be on the side of like righteousness, man. Like, this is a good fight. So what is going on? Why is this an issue? And he was like, you need to stop and you need to turn your protest into a business. And I didn't understand what he was. I mean, in the moment, I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, what do you do well? And I said, I make music, I make videos. He said, then that's what you do. That's what you need to do. He said, you need to turn your protest into a business. That's all he wanted to give me that day. He was upset that I was even calling him with that like hot boy stuff. And he was like, listen, man, you need to calm down. You need to think about what I told you. And, you know, just to be fully transparent, this is like a triple OG high ranking blood member who was giving me this advice.
Wow.
And so, and rest in peace. He actually just passed last year. But the thing is, he like planted that seed. And I remember looking at my brother G at the time, and I was like, bro, what would have made you stay longer today? And he was like, I don't know, maybe if we had like bulletproof vests or something, like we would have just rocked it out and just saw. And I was like, you're right. I felt the same way. Like if we would have just had some vests or something, we would have been more protected just in case something happened. So I was like, you know what we'll do? We're going to get vests today. So we went and bought bulletproof vests so that we would be ready to continue to fight, right? And then it subsided. So the protest stopped. You know, things started, the justice system started doing its thing, and it kind of started dying down. So we didn't get the opportunity to jump out and do another protest, throw our vests on. So we just had these vests, and we just had this energy, and we didn't know what all to do with it. So I was like, I remember what our mentor said. He said, turn your protest into a business. So we're like, okay, let's start a business together. Let's do this film thing. Let's take it more serious, and let's give it a cool name that has to do with what we're feeling. And he was like, oh, let's call it like Bulletproof Brothers. I'm like, bro, no, that's kind of like too obvious. That's kind of weird. And I was like, what if we name it Kevlar, which is what it's made out of? And it has to do with the exact trajectory of that story. And I was like, what if we just stamp it with that? Kevlar Productions. We do business. We protest in a way as in putting us in position to win, telling our stories at the highest quality possible, and trying to exclusively hire within as much as we can, so that we're accurately telling our stories. You know, just briefly on that, like I worked at a film company in Atlanta, and I won't get into the name, but I'll get into the fact that their concept was, we're going to tell Black stories. We're going to tell Black movies, and nobody who was making those decisions was Black. Not the writers, not the producers, but they made their entire company structure based off of like selling Black stories to the Black community, and they're not Black. So that was like, we need to try to be in that position so that we could tell our stories by us, you know? So
that's awesome, man. I mean, you're speaking to that whole concept of like representation, how it's important to not only be in the front And sometimes, most of the times, they're just feeding you some stereotypes and not necessarily like the full story about who we are. We're much more layered than that. You know, I wanted to get back to the conversation that you had about your influences in a bit, but I wanted to stay on the representation piece because I think that's going to be a part that I think really connects really well with what you just illustrated with, you know, the production company and making sure that we tell our story. So tell me what you've learned being in industry and why representation has been so important. And then we've heard things about like, you know, movements, particularly in Hollywood and also in the entertainment industry. But what are you seeing now, particularly now that we have the advent of like the internet and being able to be much more self-sufficient, crowdfunding, all that stuff? What have you seen, learned, and you know, for anybody who's thinking about jumping in on the, you know, on the industry, what are some things that you think you could impart upon them?
Sure, yeah, that's a lot. Let me see. So first thing that I've seen that I've noticed is a lot of the times people like us in our community, we're innovators, and somebody who knows how to capitalize off of your innovative energy will if you don't. So therefore, sometimes a lot of, well, what you've seen most of the time in history of the film business has been other people capitalizing off of the innovators. And then once people get conscious of that, then they start complaining, they voice their opinions. But at that point, I mean, those checks are already cut, and that legacy is already theirs. But they basically created a legacy out of your innovation, out of your initial thought. So whatever it is, like what Nipsey Hussle used to talk about, owning your masters. I mean, this is what we have to start transitioning to, is ownership. Ownership is so important in our community, whether it's owning your house, owning your business, just owning your time in general. That's how it starts. If you can't own one of those things, it's really hard to kind of get into a mindset of like, we as a community need to own more. You know, it's about, like you said, being on the front lines of that. But what I've seen in on the positive side, working in Atlanta, they call it Black Hollywood, and that's very much true. That's what I love about Atlanta, is that, I mean, even down to restaurants and just the industry of the entertainment industry out there in general, it's very much dominated by people of color, and they're unapologetic about that. They're very like inclusive in a way, and they're very much about being a team about that. Yeah, you don't get along with everybody, but there's this general energy, this general understanding. Like, hey guys, if we just can squash this like discussion to the side, we can go together and get this money. We can build this company together, or we can build this entire block, and we can build parks, and we can do that. So what it ends up leading into, not just your film business or whatever business, is once you are all on that same page, you start realizing that this is like your new community that you're building, of people who are more self-sufficient, people like you who are diverse, who have really great ideas. So we have really great ideas, and the first thing you need to do, like as far as trying to get into the music or the film business, is find that consciousness. Like I said, you need to find that consciousness. Don't just do stuff for the sake of doing stuff, because we have to almost work like double, triple time. You know, we don't have that opportunity to just like, let me just wait around and see if I like this or not. Like, we are fighting a war that is bigger than how many records you can sell. It's bigger than how many big projects you can be on. You have to also understand that just you being in the production meeting, representing a Puerto Rican or representing a Cuban or whatever, you are like creating history, new history. So that's what I'm seeing. Like, I'm seeing stuff that's never been done before. I got to work with our brother studios on one of the productions that I did, one of the music videos that I did, and I was surprised to know. First of all, that's Tyler Perry's former studio, and and then now he basically, his business partner from before owns our brothers now, but he's Latino, And if I'm not mistaken, he might be like the only Latino that owns a film studio like that big in the industry.
Wow.
And Our Brother Studio is a big studio. That's where all the Medea movies were filmed and everything like that. And now it's a Latino that owns it. And then his brother, Tyler Perry, owns the biggest film lot in the country. And he bought a Confederate Army base property to put it in. And he named the buildings after prominent black people in the entertainment industry. It's like these are the plays that we need to be focusing on. We need to be playing three different games at once. We have to catch up. There's a lot of catching up to do. That's how I say it. That's my friendly way of telling people that I exclusively try to hire from within. It's like we got a lot of catching up to do. It's nothing personal.
That's true. It's really
Mm-hmm.
true. You know, something that you kind of referenced, particularly, you talked about your OG who really guided you, particularly, you know, being part of, you know, about that culture in particular, that gang culture, and then being able to be retrospectively like thinking about, or introspectively thinking about, you know, your journey and what he wanted from you. You know, what are you know, obviously he's a huge influence, but what were the other influences, even in your career piece? Like, who are the people that really dial you up and like really anchor you in the way that you need to be, so that you can be an empowering, you know, model for your community, but also, you know, a global citizen?
Um, Bob Marley, Pedro Albizu Campos, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Nipsey Hussle, in a nutshell. And then a lot of the just genius minds in general. Tesla, Albert
Mm,
Einstein, people who, engineers in general. Engineering is interesting because it's all about solving a problem. So if you can really get into like the mindset of engineers, you can solve all your problems in a way. Like you start being more conditioned to being a problem solver. So I look up to those people, and it's funny. Like I bring a lot of my inspiration comes from uh, people who don't necessarily do what I do.
mm-hmm,
Nipsey was probably the closest one, and Nipsey was the one that most recently, had a big impact. And I was able to meet Nipsey on my birthday. And it was a really, right before he passed and stuff like that. So it's a very strange thing when it comes to alignment and what you are connected with. But I remember, like, just specifically, I used to work at a warehouse. Like, a lot of the times when I was doing these shows, I was like still working a regular job, and I was working specifically in a freezer in a warehouse. And but every day I would like be playing Nipsey's music because it was all about motivating you through through everything you were going through, on every level of stress, and trying to continue to be an owner and think about the bigger picture. So that was the what I was mainly getting out of his music all the time, was just like focus on ownership, focus on getting out of here, focus on like keeping your value and remembering your value, and then go out here and get it, because and double it. Things like he used to always say, double up. And he literally teaches you the game. If Well, somebody like me, I needed to hear it from like his voice. I pick up references from everywhere. I was even when I was in Atlanta, I used to attend Ebenezer, which is Martin Luther King Jr.'s church. So like I literally will surround myself by my influences as much as possible. I'll talk to family members. I'll just stay in contact because there's something there that we're all sharing. Like these people that I named, if you really like look, they really have a bond, like a common fight. And I look for like that common spirit. What is that spirit that we're all tapping into, and what are we really fighting for? Generally, you'll just see that it's about fighting, against oppression and fighting against evil at the end of the day.
mm, mm. This almost sounds ancestral the way you put it. You know,
It,
like
it is.
digging deep into your history and pulling out, you know, some of the influences, and then really your responsibility of making sure that you're leaving your own legacy, which is really that's what we're talking about today, which is really cool.
It is, man. Honestly, it is, and it's so funny because people expect a certain conversation out of me because of what I'm around, what I'm, yeah, rappers that I work with and stuff like that. But that's not what I'm here to do.
Mm.
I'm not here to just entertain everybody's I guess nostalgia or fantasies or whatever the case is. I'm here to really get us to push the needle forward. You know, we're only here for a certain amount of time, and we all have to contribute. We all have something to contribute. Nipsey Hussle said that too. He said, regardless what you've been through, regardless what you into, I feel like I gotta tell you, you have something to contribute, and that's very true, man. Like,
Yeah.
so as much as people want to big me up and be impressed with things that I've been able to do, I'm just as impressed with them. Like every step of the way, every step of the way, every contribution that our people make, opening up another Cuban restaurant down the street, I'm excited.
Mm.
And it's Cuban owned. Oh yeah, I'm excited. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we having our own festivals. Yeah, I'm excited. We're having more representation in Netflix. Oh, that's cool. My daughter's favorite movies Encanto right now. We have
Mm-hmm.
more animated film. Like there's more than one Spanish animated film. What? Like Lin Manuel Miranda doing an amazing job. You know, doing an amazing job for our history. So it is ancestral because, bro, we are writing history right here, right now.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're not conscious of that, then you might not. You might just kind of get lost in the story. You'll probably be like a general sentence or something. But if you want a specific contribution, if you want to really pinpoint on this affect the people in this way, and I was able to do this and this and this, you know, I think that's how people's names are remembered. And ultimately, we don't just I don't represent just me. I
Right.
represent a diaspora. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the diaspora and your career. One of the, I'm going to ask you a hard question, which is, out of all the things that you are legacy building, what are you most proud of?
My daughter.
Yeah.
My daughter, bro. Honestly, you know, everything I do is like so that I can just show her how to do it, and so that she can continue the fight. So it's like if I do it right, then when my daughter is my age, watch out, she's gonna be a problem, you know. And that's really where my pride is because it is about also investing in the future. And so I look at these kids, I look at like the all the jokes that they say about the kids on the iPhones and technology kids and all. I think that's cool. I celebrate that. We just need to figure out how to father that better. But they're going to be scaling us up in a way different way if we father them right and we allow it. So that's it, right? My daughter, bro, and
That's
my
what's up.
nephews and nieces because I'm in their ears too.
Good. You are acting as a mentor right now, and
Mhm.
that legacy building is such an important piece that we need to invest into that, into that space, particularly with the young folks.
Yeah,
I think I even recall even my own experiences thinking about uncles and aunts, and just it didn't hit me at the time, but now as a grown man, I can kind of look back and be like, I do this because of this person, or I didn't know I could reach heights because of this person. I have a cousin of mine who was gifted in architecture, and he actually got me into it. And I'm probably in middle school, high school, and I actually was advanced in doing architectural design. So by the time I got to high school, people were like, "How did you learn how to do this?" And it was because of him. He really, really influenced me. Even to this day, he was a comic book artist. I collected comic books. I started drawing. So I got into it at a very, very, very early age. But you
yeah,
just never know what sticks. And when you get older, you start to realize, wow, I'm actually doing a lot of the things that ancestral or my OGs or whoever influenced me move me forward, that dial forward, right? And so I think what you're also talking about is exponentially moving that dial forward, right? Now that we know what we know, now we can move forward and really impart upon the new generation to take it to the next level. So that's a
absolutely,
blessing.
absolutely. And I think it's like it's important to take back what was taken in a way. You know, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things were taken from us. Our history was taken from us, and in the Caribbean specifically, they say there's a lie that the Tainos are extinct. That's a lie. They've done DNA studies showing that the blood, the mitochondrial DNA, all leads to one. tribe centralized in the Caribbean. We know who that is. But because of politics, they're not going to like rewrite that right now. But we got to keep forcing that stuff because we then forget how great we are if we don't know. You know, we forget the things that we were already really, really good at before. And surviving in this part of the world for so long under the conditions that we've lived in without all the technology, that's an entirely incredible accomplishment that I think that is overlooked. I think people don't care enough about that at all. And yeah, man, like I'm excited to see how the new generation who's researching so much, they're learning this stuff within 20 minutes.
Yep.
And they're understanding it. The older generation's already kind of, if you're not gonna go backwards, then it's over for you. But the kids now, they're growing up with like history in their hand, history that they don't have to rely on school. They're getting it right there, and they can do something really powerful with that. But we have to be very proud in that sense of reclaiming our greatness. Yeah, and even with hip hop, like I get a lot of stuff for like being a Puerto Rican rapper. Sometimes the conversations come up like, oh, why don't you do salsa or merengue or like your people's music? And it's like my people's music is hip hop, bro. If you really look into the origins of hip hop and who still dominates different aspects of hip hop now, like graffiti writing. Go to the graffiti museum in Miami, and most of those graffiti artists, historic graffiti artists, Puerto Rican guys.
Yep.
It's like I know it, but it's like the world don't know it, and we have to, and also we don't know it. So there's this disconnect within island Puerto Ricans, Floricuas, New Yorkers. Yeah, you like that? You
I
like that?
like that. I've never
Right.
heard that before, Floricuas, but that it makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, for real. And there's that disconnect, and then it's like there's a disconnect, and it's almost like we don't uh we don't acknowledge each other's contributions. We need to start seeing that whole thing together. The New Yorkers are the reason why we are in the conversation of hip hop. And hip hop shaped all of the world's music.
Yep.
And when I don't understand, that's one of the biggest contributions that our people have made to history, and we still don't know that we made it. So generally.
That's right. You heard it here. If you haven't heard that before, as far as hip hop is concerned, if you look at the roots, it's always been black Puerto Rican, particularly Puerto Ricans, joining together because those communities were so connected in the neighborhoods and socioeconomics, all that stuff. So if you haven't done your research, you got it at the palm of your hand. Make sure you go back and check out all the movers and shakers there. I actually featured it in my IG through the Young Lords Party. They have a page, and they actually went in and kind of featured some of the folks who were actually at the forefront of hip hop, which is amazing when you see all the Boricuas that are actually a part of that history. And so we just need to again reframe that history. It's so important, and keep telling it and just pass it down until everyone's ears are kind of being inundated with all that information. It's so important to continue that history. So yeah. So speaking of which, speaking about your, the music side, what are you listening to now?
Flamenco.
What? Flamenco.
That's
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. I'm not gonna lie to you though. That's in a nutshell. Flamenco music is gypsy music that was the Spanish capitalized on it, sold it as their culture, and it's not. It's actually gypsy culture, and it was illegal for them to practice flamenco dancing and music and stuff. And it was a music that was created within the gypsy culture, the Jewish culture, the Moorish culture. These people they weren't even able to congregate. It was illegal for them to congregate, let alone create a culture. And they did. And then eventually, when they realized how dope it was, they started selling tourism. Like, oh, we have a music, we have a culture. Come on, it's not y'all. It wasn't their music. It was so. I've been like deliberately listening to flamenco, real Gitano flamenco, so that I can like once again soak in that energy of it's just like how hip hop started. It's just like how hip hop started, but it's like they now also dominate flamenco. not the Gitanos, not the Gypsies. They still deal with oppression and racism right now to this day in Spain. And they're the ones who created their culture. It's crazy, bro.
It is. Well, it that history. If you go deep enough, you'll see kind of the unfortunate fleecing of culture, of other people's culture. It could, thinking about Spain in particular, you think about all, especially during the Moors' time, how much of as a quote unquote melting pot, or I should say, the most inclusive communities that you could see just living together and in not, I'm going to say harmony, but there was a freedom, particularly around religion. I mean, El Alhambra was a prime example before the Crusades came, where all these, faiths were meeting up in the same spot. Like, what is that about? Like, how do people not know about El Alhambra, right? And during the Crusades, it was they constructed around it so that you couldn't see the influences of the Jewish faith, the Muslim faith, right, and the Christian faith all in one spot. And so that's just interesting that we don't think to say, well, our history is much more global and expansive than we give it credit for. Shout out to our indigenous people too. I mean, they contributed so much. They suffered a lot. And our African roots, like, a lot of the colonialism and the racism and ethnic cleansing that occurred was because, people needed to be over someone. And so unfortunately, those communities in particular suffered. But like you said, they did not die off because we are present in their purpose and in their stature. And so we look like them. We're genetically connected to them. And they'll always be remembered by that.
Right. That's why,
yeah,
right?
Go ahead.
I was about to say that's why we have such a strong responsibility, man. It's bigger than just making music or whatever. Like, you got to tap into the people who died for y'all, like for us to be here, and suffered so much for us to be here, or the women that were violated, and then we were offspring of that and things like that. Like, we have a very serious connection to that, whether we like it or not. It affects us every day, whether we like it or not, and we need to just start paying attention to that.
That trauma is not does happen when it happens. It's ancestral, like you said. It does leave an imprint. So we thank you for bringing up that particular concept and idea around, like, racial trauma in particular. Like that's a thing. Like, that's serious. Oh, yeah. And it does either uplift us or it tears us down as communities. So that's why it's important, like you said, to continue the history searching and finding.
Yes,
all right.
Exactly.
So we're at the end of the show. I want to make sure we get some parting words from you, and some wisdom around what you think you want to leave with the familia in the Limbo Latino Sala. Something that either words of wisdom or even something that you would refer to them to kind of get deeper into some of the things that you were talking about today.
Okay, so real simple. I got a couple things for y'all. Like, one thing that Kevlar is all about is find a way to find a way. So meditate on that phrase, find a way to find a way. It's not about making excuses. It's not about blaming anybody else. Yeah, we've got trauma, we've got oppression, we've got all these things that are stacked against us, but then we can also stack against that. So it's about finding a way to find a way. That's number one. And if you can apply that to anything you're trying to do, you'll be all right. Whether it's cooking, whether it's going to work and trying to get a promotion, find a way to find a way, make that shake. And we are innovators, remember that. So we have it within us to continue to innovate. You didn't make your pastele recipe just like how your grandma did it, but you probably can make it even better if you just continue to find a way to find a way. So that's my advice too, within trying to be in the entertainment industry. Aside from, also, if you want to be in the entertainment industry, like, try to work in those cities where the industry is. So there's like hot spots like LA, obviously, or close to LA, New York City, Atlanta, Miami, and even Orlando. So if you're not living in those parts, if you're living in Kansas and you're trying to figure out how to get into the entertainment industry, first you need to find a way. to move and move to these places. And then the next thing is, how do you sustain a life there while you're also pursuing your careers? But just don't stop. Just don't stop, and you'll be surprised. But you also do have to be in those places. Like me living in Atlanta for a short time frame, and I'm back in Florida now in Tampa. But I was able to experience such a heightened level of success with people because of being in the right place. So that's I'll leave you with that too. I don't know if I missed one of the questions though, but
No, my brother, that was phenomenal. Gracias por todo. If people want to know more about your production studio and what you're working on, where should they go? What's the best place for people to, pick up what you throw down?
yeah, so KevlarProductions.com, Kevlar Productions on Instagram and YouTube. And then my Instagram is hello, I'm Prime, just to keep it short and sweet. And also, I'm going to be releasing a YouTube series of videos where I am giving more back, like giving more advice, because I'm not usually vocal. I don't usually do this anymore. So I want to start. Obviously, you can see that I have a lot in me to share. So I'm actually creating a series of videos all about quitting your day job, getting in the film industry, dealing with celebrities, all of those specific things. I'm currently working on that. So if you guys subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is Prime Ethic, then you guys will see more stuff there. So let's stay in touch.
That's right. And they can follow your career from beginning to end. They just need to go in and dive into the internet and really spend some time and invest in this brother. He's such a talent. So I'm truly blessed, and I appreciate all the knowledge you dropped today. It was just as rewarding as I thought it would be. And I'm so glad that you accepted my invitation to come on to the Limbo Latino podcast and show. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
we will be following you and making sure we provide updates and making sure that we support my brother. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, bro. It's all love. Anytime.
All right. Te veo, and thank you.
Nos vemos.